Ever wondered what it takes to turn a bold idea into a thriving global business? Our guest today has done it all, from building startups and leading venture studios to coaching founders on how to unleash their true potential. He's been on both sides of the table, investing millions and scraping for funds himself. With 2 decades of experience in the trenches, he is the go to guy for navigating the chaos of the startup world. Stick around because this conversation is about to get real, raw, and absolutely invaluable. Welcome to the another episode of Founders Podcast. I'm your host Ash, and this is a show where I interview proven founders and industry experts who share their stories, strategies, and insights to help you build, launch, and grow your business. In this episode, I talk to Vijay, the founder of Startup System and coach for executives. So I hope you enjoy the show. Vijay, welcome to the show.
Hi, Asha. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Great. Do you have a favorite quote, something that inspires or motivates you that you would like to share with our audience?
I have a few favorites, but one that I think is the most important for founders to remember is be yourself. Everyone else is taken. And that's something by Oscar Wilde that I'm reminded of, particularly in these times where we're trying to be our best version of ourselves. And that's often some of the most important work that I do with leaders that I coach.
Awesome. Awesome. So Vijay, tell us more about the startup system. What does this service or product do? Who is it for? And what's
Yeah.
the main problem you're helping to solve?
So Startup System is a combination of different important things that need to happen in the life of a startup. And it's born from my experience working 0 to 1, helping others launch 0 to 1, helping them fundraise, go to market, particularly B2B. And I've also launched a B2C company in the past. But also, it has to do with what are the metrics and what are the things that you need to have in order to scale. And so these things that start with how you launch, how you fundraise, how you are going to go to market. Fourthly, how you have to build a team. And then what are the things you're going to measure and do in order to scale are not just things that you can set and forget. You have
Hmm.
to go about reapproaching this every 18 to 24 months if you are going from stage to stage and strength to strength as a startup, because you are moving almost to the next level of a video game. It didn't get 10% harder. It got dramatically more challenging. And what you did before will be enough, right? And so you go through this cycle, this system again, and reapproach it with a growth mindset in terms of how your business is going to look different at every stage. And also you as a leader are going to need to look different at every stage.
Got it. Got it. And I want to understand where actually the story began, where the idea came from, start the system. But before we get into that, I have a burning question. You have worked with startups across 80 countries already, right? What are
Yes.
the universal challenges founders face regardless of their location? I mean, you're the right person to ask this question because you work
Yes.
with so
Yes. So I'm going to dimensionalize this a little bit and make it about first-time founders,
Mhm.
because the first-time founder experience is very similar. I think the founder experience is usually a challenge of, if we look at the definition of entrepreneur, right? It's someone who is trying to affect change with limited access to resources. And
Mhm.
so the thing that they all have in common is they are stuck between a chicken and an egg and something else. So maybe it's a chicken and an egg and a rooster, where they are struggling for capital, for customers, and also for capabilities, be it talent or something else that is the secret sauce of their business. And they're trying to almost kickstart one of those things in such a way that it will allow the others to come together. And that is often where, whether you are in Silicon Valley or you are in Senegal, like you have to think very creatively and sort of hack your way into one of those like three things to do something as unexpected and to more than overcompensate for that lack of limited resources.
Interesting. And most of the listeners on our show, they reach out back to me and ask this question. So imagine you're working 9 to 5, right? But you don't really like your job. What you're doing is you're putting the food on the table, and you have to do it because who will do that, right?
It's very
Um,
important.
it's very important. You have to get
Yeah.
the food, you get shelter, you get the clothing, right? There's a main three things. But then you reach to a certain point in your life where you have a little bit saving in your account. It will sustain you for like maybe a year or something. And then you want to get out of this 9 to 5 rat race, and then you start something up. Potential, very good idea. You get hire people to build it, or you build it yourself, things like that. Where people or where founders struggle at this point is gaining interest from investors. What kind of challenges the first time founders come to you when it comes to getting traction from the investor's perspective?
So, in my experience, people who want to quit the rat race and have that primary motivation of not working 9 to 5 are trying to build a lifestyle business. And that's just fine. That is admirable. We should all want that freedom and independence to be able to work for ourselves, and that's okay. However, a lifestyle business, even if it produces $10, $20 million in revenue and you live very comfortably and you pay your people well and your customers are happy and you're creating value in the world, that is not venture scale. And so, the motivations for starting the business and whether or not it's going to be a very big business and the degree of hunger you have, matter dramatically. And so there are sometimes very particular times when you can start a company. One, if you have like nothing to lose, right? Like you're very early professionally, right, in your 20s, and you can like build a business, or you have a lot of professional experience and knowledge, and you see this like problem that has to be solved, and you will take a actual big risk. And maybe this could be in your late 30s, early 40s, and the average unicorn founder, according to some data, is 38 or 39. That is like very powerful because then you're able to like draw on this experience to fix something and like reshape an industry and achieve a $1 billion valuation one day for that business, become a unicorn, which is what investors are looking for. Like investors, given the degree of business failure, as we know, need to have just really outsized returns. And that is what the power law keeps teaching us through every cycle. And that's the thing that I impress upon many of the founders is you can be a founder. You can build a valuable business. You can create the life you want, like that. And that's all we should have to think about. But if the life you want includes creating an enormous business in which you might own a few percentage points or like close to nothing sometimes by the time a liquidity event is achieved, like then go do that. And if that's not what you want, then go create something that's more sustainable, more gradual, maybe a legitimately large enterprise from where you're standing now, but not necessarily venture scale.
And okay, so let's step back to my previous part which I wanted to cover.
Yeah.
Let's talk about where did your story begin, and let's talk about when you started your first startup, and let's elaborate on the point like how you approached toward getting investment, and
Yeah.
then potentially, share some more ideas or techniques or strategies which
Yeah.
first time founders could utilize in order to go into the same direction.
Right. So my story and interest in working in startups and ventures was when I was in college, and I had the good fortune to work one summer, not for a big bank on their currency trading desk, which is one offer I had received, but instead to go work for a company that did venture leasing, because back in the day, if you were starting a biotech company, you needed to lease a lot of equipment. If you were starting a website in Web 1.0, you needed to get servers, and someone had to lease them to you. And so then if you were successful, then that server crashed, and then you need to buy more servers, and then you could grow in that sort of very weird step function way that's hard to imagine now in the age of cloud services. So at that time, I saw what was possible and what was happening in technology and new business models in particular, and have just been hooked on that ever since. Fast forward to 2012, I had worked in a couple different areas and across a couple of different industries. I'd also been a management consultant, and what I had found was there were these issues in the retail and consumer packaged goods industry where specialty food products were not able to reach customers that wanted to try different things. And there was an increasing interest and openness to subscription-based food products and things like that. So that's when I started Hungry Globetrotter, which was a packaged food business that focused on recipe sauces and spices with a different country or regional cuisine theme that people would subscribe to once a month. And this is where, as a first-time founder, I made a whole lot of mistakes in terms of how I chose perhaps to not iterate fast enough. I didn't build something that enough people wanted. Business was growing, but not scaling terribly fast. Is how that first startup turned out. However, my approach to investors was usually, okay, let me go and tell people what I'm doing, and then understand, do they have a consumer focus, and what they would be able to do to invest. And what I found is, and now this is a bit of an adage, is that if you ask people for money, you get advice. And when you pitch people and then you ask them for advice, they're more open about giving you money. And this is very counterintuitive, but really was important for me to understand, as I wanted to get people's input. And so what people would say sometimes is, you maybe don't need capital yet. You need to run a certain number of experiments and prove something. And where I saw the most traction was with early on was with an angel investor, and he had been very successful, and he invested or started one of the first online dating websites in the 90s, and so he said, okay, I'm very interested because I like businesses like yours. And then it was a totally different conversation. And we talked about, hey, here's what it costs, and this is how we acquire customers. And then we were having this really great flowing discussion. And so what I learned there is, you have to find the people who already want to invest in the world you're trying to create. They already believe in the future you are building. So yes.
And I want to touch on this point, because this is a very good point you mentioned here. How do you, so for example, you're in US, you're in a ecosystem where approaching other people or figuring out whom to approach might be easier compared to somebody who is sitting in, I don't know, Sri Lanka, right? And I saw these popping up shops online all the time, and don't take me wrong, nothing against them, but these people are reaching out on LinkedIn, not just to me, but all of my founders, circle friends. Oh, we will send 3,000 emails for you to all the investors in.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, that's ridiculous, right? Because investors don't have time to open your pitch and then read through it, something like that.
Yeah,
What
people don't want to
advice?
read your cold pitch, and actually, specifically, if it is from a middleman, a broker, an intermediary of some kind, then I immediately think this person does not have the ability to personally reach the right investors, which is a very unfair thing in some ways to say, because like, of course, not everyone has the best networks, right? Like some people do, some people don't. However, finding creative ways to reach somebody who is relevant, and knowing who is relevant, is a sign of sophistication in fundraising. And what you should at the very least not do is show that you're unsophisticated and use some of these services like you described to just spam investors. So it is both a red flag and a waste of your time and money, and leading you in a direction of people who don't believe in necessarily in the world you're trying to build. And so instead of convincing people that what you're doing is right, like finding the people that already have signaled or demonstrated their interest in what you do is far more powerful, because you want to find those birds of a feather that flock together, as opposed to trying to convince someone to do something that's just not them.
So how would 21-year-old Vijay Rajendran will do it if he has started a new SaaS business? And
Mm-hmm.
what would be the current day Vijay advice to the 21-year-old Vijay in the
Yeah,
in the past?
the 21-year-old would go to like all the meetups in San Francisco, and then just like talking about, oh, I'm doing this thing, I really like care about this space, I'm very passionate about like this, and probably wouldn't have like built anything yet. And the version of me today would be like, yeah, so I created this thing, and then I like, and the SaaS product is something that I have like 2 people already in pilots, and they like it, and this is like my design partnership, and I have traction and off to the races. But you, Ash, I know that you have a lot of experience in supply chain software and integrating it. Tell me, what are the top problems that you've seen founders encounter, or what are customers doing in the age of AI? And have a conversation that allows you to listen and not just pitch, so that you get insights and be like, oh yeah, okay, great, I'm gonna like incorporate that and create a set of lines, not dots, not just singular interactions with individuals who are like-minded, and so that they see what you're building in the space, and in some way they're going to want to be a part of it, either to say, yes, I'm trying to solve this problem in our company, or I have a friend who's trying to address this, let me introduce you, or our angel group, or the VC firm I work with, whatever it is, should know more about this. When can we get a meeting on the books, right? So like, those are the things you do to develop relationships and to demonstrate traction, so that you're sharing the evidence of your ability to execute your proof of work, and not just like hanging out and feeling like you're doing the entrepreneurial thing by loosely networking.
Got it. Got it. So, would you be open to share with our listeners about how actually the startup system works? What are the different steps we can take leverage of it? I mean, I don't want you to disclose any proprietary
No, sure.
IP or
No,
anything,
yeah,
but
no, not at all. Yeah. So the big parts are the funding framework. And so this is a book that is coming out in January, and I can share the key parts of the funding framework, and where I help people to work through what is a system or a process for fundraising, because systems win over serendipity here. You need to have a great narrative. So storytelling is number one. Secondly, there's the organization of how you should be fundraising and what you need to do to have prepared content and materials and be ready. Thirdly, after that is outreach. And notice I didn't say pitching or networking or any of those things. Outreach is a process by which you are going to connect to a few very important and relevant and on thesis investors, and run a tight process to meet them in a compact period of time. And then finally closing with confidence and just structure a process such that you are in control of when money is getting wired, and not leaving it up to when people remember to help you. And that's true whether you're dealing with angels or with VCs or whatever, right? So that's the funding framework. After the funding framework is team building. At the heart of team building, well, there's many parts to team building, and I have a background as an executive and leadership coach. Is something I picked on, which I really like, which is working genius. And I think this is so much more important than the personality tests and things that we see floating around the internet, because working genius, developed by the Table Group and Pat Lancioni, is a process by which we understand productivity, not personality. And we look at how you have strengths. Everyone's like taking StrengthsFinder and stuff like that, but also what are your frustrations? Because your frustrations are the things you don't do, and they will drive everyone else crazy. And then where there is friction in the company, and also where you as a founder need to know intelligently when and how you can, if not delegate, but like share and or outsource or recognize what it is that you're not doing, and again, be the best version of yourself, as I was alluding to earlier. And then after team building, as I was saying before, there's this idea of metrics and KPIs and things like that in order to scale. There's many ways to do this. I think OKRs are still the easiest and most tangible, and they waterfall down. But designing that in a way that also allows people to influence, ideate, and develop some of their KRs, and to make sure as you do this, you give people ownership of what they do, and accountability for the KRs. Only happens when you have that sort of buy-in. And so those are the aspects of the startup system and how I work with many leaders to be more effective in this way. And sometimes it is different. Like it is just about working with the human and interpersonal dynamics. Part of team building is co-founder coaching. So there have been co-founders that I have coached together in the same situation, and we're talking about one person feels they're building this, the other person feels they're working on that, and how these things are not at odds, but they can create this fork in where the business is at any one time. And so what I learned from my time with 500 startups, also known as 500 Global, is the early ability to have high quality communication is a great predictor of a startup's longevity. Companies with like really poor communication eventually become dysfunctional, and then they're like, no one's talking to each other, and then in 6 months, and then they're all working on the wrong thing, and then before you know it, they're asking, hey, do you know a good lawyer who can dissolve the business or something like that?
Yeah.
So, like, as I was talking to one startup attorney who's been in the space for a long time, by the time they get to them to dissolve the business, like it's like asking for, unfortunately, like another type of divorce. It's really late, and the time to invest in the quality of this relationship as co-founders is much earlier. And so for some people it is how they socialize. For other people it is the type of one-on-ones they have. sometimes like asking ourselves, what does performance look like? What does quality look like? And who can help me get there is where coaching matters. And so I can't just like coach on one thing. Like I can't just, I feel, coach you on fundraising if your story is not aligned to who you are and you're not leading the business in that way and you don't have the metrics and so forth to follow through on the things you promised and the funds you've raised and the milestones you want to hit, right? So we have to have an integrated system, and that's really why the startup system is something that I've developed, and there's a description of this at mystartupsystem.com that folks can check out. And I'm happy to break that down for individuals so they can like understand it.
That's what I was trying to figure out. So just to reiterate, you mentioned a couple of things which I tried to note down. The first part was storytelling, but that comes under a different umbrella. Is that correct?
Yeah. So the storytelling, organization, outreach, and closing with confidence are part of the fundraising support, right? So you have launch, you have fund. Firstly, secondly, fundraising. Thirdly, is go to market. Fourth is team building, and then fifth is metrics and KPIs to scale.
Right. Fourth is cool. Got it. And then you mentioned that ideas of OKRs and KPIs is also one of the elements in your system.
Yeah.
Right. Launching the product, fundraising, organizational outreach, and then team building. Is that I'm going into the right direction here from top to bottom?
Yeah. I mean, that's right. The funding framework is those four things, which is storytelling, organization, outreach, and closing. After fundraising is go to market. So go to market is a whole other like layer of the funding, of the startup system. And go to market for me is where I'm usually coaching on founder sales strategy. And so I developed a course on this a couple of years ago for Maven as one of their early expert contributors to that educational platform. And there's a lot of different stuff there, and that's great on product, on negotiation, on investing, on different things, design. But how to really kickstart sales when you are responsible for it in the B2B context is something then I work one-on-one with leaders on, so that they can be more effective with that 0 to 1 founder-led sales.
Got it. Okay, great. So I think the parts which I would like to uncover a little bit more is the organization outreach and the go-to-market strategy. I think these are very important two elements of any first-time journey of any first-time founder. But before we go into these parts, can you share a compelling case study that highlights how a company leveraged the system to achieve the success and solve their key business challenges, which is obviously, grow and get investment? And then I would love to hear about the specific strategy you suggested them in order to grow with the pace they wanted to.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things I found working with some companies is often that they are trying to present a story that they think fits with where the rest of the industry and the market is, as opposed to one that is extremely authentic. And so I'm going to focus on just the fundraising part. And so where I have, helped founders to refine what they're trying to say is to simplify to the point of a very hero's journey type of story, where they can help create this excitement on the part of investors of here's where the world is, or this is what people used to do, and now that's changed. And by the way, here's why now is a time to pay attention to the space that maybe you didn't recognize before, because we're going to create a whole new category or a whole new opportunity for the world to look differently. And this is going to be a venture scale outcome as a result. And to make sure it's clear they are the best team in the world in order to go after this and implement this. And so I did this for a company in SaaS and in the productivity space recently. And there were many light bulb moments, but the desire to overcomplicate some things and to explain this is how we do every little thing was something I helped the team to pull back from. And then as a result, knowing, okay, this is what we need and this is what we need to put together, and this is what investors expect. And what are then when it came to organizing before you did the outreach, it's to understand this is a little bit of investor psychology. People don't want to invest in anything with less than a 10 billion addressable market. Why? Because even if you capture a small piece of it, then how do we know you're going to be valuable? Trying to work backwards from that and to make sure, hey, have we developed and are we pitching a business that is default investable? Even before we start pitching Ash as an investor who likes this category, likes this space, right? So
yeah,
that is a big part of it. And then finally, on the closing side, is to think about, okay, how are you and your team going to put on your project management hat and have a checklist? And I've actually put my checklist on my website so that people, if they want, can just go find it and use it for closing, so that they have everything that they need in order to just be able to wrap up the funding. So that's a little bit about how that part was developed. And the reason that I like to talk about fundraising is because when it's when there's a lot of individual growth and leadership, and this is a very coachable moment. So how you're going to present yourself in front of an investor as a peer and inviting them to join you on this journey and be a future partner is very, very important. And so there's a mindset there, but you can't tell people you need this mindset and then they will just do it. You have to act your way into a new way of thinking rather than think your way into a new way of acting. And so the activity of fundraising is a way to level you up as a leader and as a person, right? In many ways, improving everything from communication and sharing your vision all the way down to how you organize and learn in a short time a whole lot of intricacies. Now take that to another thing you brought that you're interested in, which was the go-to-market aspect. If you were sold anything before, that's okay, because what you're really doing is embarking on a quest of gathering knowledge about what is important to your customers and how you can solve their deepest problems, creating a lot of empathy there and understanding the intricacies of their organization and how hard their job is and who can say yes and who can say no over there, so that you're able to build a product that can be easily sold, if not outright bought, without as much friction. And so it is more of that sort of process of finding your way into big companies and getting to a yes, as opposed to the million ways in which people can say no, which is very different from what other people assume sales is like, which is, well, I have a list and I have to get 1,000 emails out and see if someone replies, and then I will show up to the meeting and hand them my business card or something like that, right? So the 0 to 1 process of a high degree of almost consultative, but certainly empathetic solving of other people's problems is where I find there's a lot of opportunity to coach the individual and their situation and Sometimes they do this in a cohort-based fashion, and in the case of the class that I teach on Maven, or otherwise, it may be much more one-on-one if that is a one-on-one coaching relationship.
Got it. Got it. In 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 general, the venture capital world is often portrayed as ruthless, and I guess most of the people agree on that. The reason is we see these Shark Tank and Dragon's Den, things like shows, and then we see how founders being treated, and that's the better side of it, because in real life it's different. What advice do you have for founders approaching investors in real world?
Hmm. I would not set your expectations based on what you see on Shark Tank or Dragon's Den. And the reason is not that you want to be any less confident than the people who have to go on to television and tell the world what they're doing, which can be scary, right? It's actually because the negotiation with an investor and the drama and all of that should not be part of what you're doing. Instead of like approaching these dragons and these sharks and saying like, will you please like do this, right? The attitude is much more like, we are creating this product, this service. It is something our customers love. We are going to be successful. The train is leaving the station. We are generating FOMO, fear of missing out, among investors. We want to work with the best people. Are you up for that? And to accept that, the investors are going to say no 99% of the time, because that's their job, is to like look at 100 or 1,000 deals and like pick one. And then even out of their portfolio, they know half of those companies will fail, a third will be zombies, and then there will be some like winners out of it. Maybe, the numbers differ by firm and by fund, but recognizing the attachment that the VCs have, and that they're trying to be efficient and not anything less, helps you like kind of like have a conversation and say like, what would this need to, and again, maybe you're just like approaching them saying like, yeah, let me share what we're doing, and if this is not what if you like, what would this need to look like to be successful, like, and then to say, hey, can I add you to our updates list? And they'll probably say yes, and maybe they'll read the stuff. But when you develop a connection and you grow a relationship with a potential investor, and they get to see those lines, not dots, over time, it really matters. Because one thing I experienced, and something many other investors will confirm, is that the rate and consistency at which a startup is sending investor updates is a good predictor of many other things that they follow through on. And it works its way backwards, to which you are shipping product and hiring people and growing the team and acquiring customers, and then doing that in a way that you're then reporting out on what you're doing. It's when people stop sending reports that I tell angel investors or aspiring angel investors, then you have to like worry. So the fact that you're sending reports and asking for help and doing things and like showing growth is part of your journey and part of how your relationship builds. And that's very different than this reality TV, scripted drama of, let's go into the den with the dragons or in the tank with the sharks and like see if they eat us alive, or decide to invest something on valuation terms that have no resemblance to how VC deals are priced and investments are being made there, which is very market based.
Interesting. And I always thought that it's very, very similar, because They're just portraying what exactly happens behind the scene. In front of the camera, it's just fast paced, you know. That's what my understanding was. But yeah, good to know. Good to know. From your own experience, like you started like literally from bootstrapping, right? And then you got investment and you grown up. What's the best or actually the biggest lesson you have learned about resilience and growth in founder space? Maybe you can share an example.
Yeah, I will say the biggest asset is it has nothing to do with your business, but it is if you have a very supportive partner.
Mm.
The the quality of relationships in your life determine whether you will be happy. And you can be unhappy and successful, but if you want to, but you can't be unhappy and resilient, because there will be failures before the successes come.
Yeah, yeah. I heard somewhere that start collecting no's, because once you reach to your first 1,000 no's, you can assure that you will be successful. That's how startup world works. It's like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
no,
it's I heard, and I haven't like seen the video, but I heard in one interview, Mr. Beast, who
yeah,
obviously such a successful creator, gets asked all the time, "Can you give me some advice on starting my YouTube channel or
yeah,
whatever?" And he says, "Create 100 videos and then come and ask me for advice."
yeah.
Most people won't do the thing. Most people won't do 100 things that suck. Most people won't collect 1,000 no's.
Mm, that's true. That's true. Great. So I'm enjoying this conversation so much, Vijay, but we are limited of time and we have to move towards the lightning round. But before we go there, I try to note down our conversation in a way that it makes sense, and then I try to create these small doodles.
Oh,
Um, yeah, yeah. So I try to do it with all my guests, and in a way, it's telling the story to our listeners that if you're a founder, first of all, you need to follow a system, because if you don't, you will burn out, and then that would be the end. Um, the system should, focus on few things. For example, you need to understand. You need to first learn about how you tell your story. You need to come up with a hero journey, so that not just your customers, but also investors can understand, relate to it, and potentially get a wow effect, right? You need to launch, you need to fundraise, you need to go strategize your go to market strategy, you need to outreach organizations, and you need to build a team. But all these steps have their own structure, own step by step processes, and you have to follow it. Again, I don't know exactly what steps are there, but I'm sure if people go to your website and then download the book, they might be able to learn about it, right?
There's content, yes, on the website. A number of like checklists. There's also a knowledge summary of the book. The book is coming out though early January from Leaders Press, and available on Amazon and everywhere that books are sold online. So definitely sign up for my Substack, or follow my startup system on LinkedIn for updates on when you can pre-order the book.
Cool, cool. One of the things which I've noticed when we were having our conversation was you mentioned about high quality communication, which is something very interesting for me, in this aspect. And would you be able to elaborate on that, and how does that affect a founder's life, and what are the consequences not having this element in the founder's journey?
High quality communication is about three things, and they are simple in many respects, but very hard to do. The first one is mean what you say and say what you mean.
Mhm.
The second is to, to frame things in a way that doesn't judge people, but judges their work, because you will feel responsible for it. And whether you're someone who wants to be in founder mode or someone who focuses on like their little part, their part of the business, that's their strengths, like their different styles, right? Like I think it is really important to be able to do that for others around you. And then the third part of high quality communication is that you're able to to really summarize what your intent is, because as your company grows and you're maybe busier and busier, and you may be spending less time with your co-founder, people's intent and what they and their expectations and things like that start to diverge, only because it's not shared. And so those are like three things. There are more, but I think the one of these things is usually wrong when there is some error in high quality communication, or lack of high quality communication, I should say.
Got it. Got it. Perfect. That's the perfect summary for high quality communication points. Great. So let's move to our lightning round, and I've got 6 quick fire questions for you, so you can answer them as quickly as possible. You ready?
Let's go.
Great. Great. What are the top 3 strategies to generate more traction for your startup in 2024? It's almost end of 2024, so let's say 2025.
Okay, so looking at 2025, again, it's hard to answer this question without knowing, but like the best way to generate like traction is, first of all, to share with your customers something that they really need, but haven't yet asked you for. And that shows, that you're listening and you're able to like respond to their needs, their workflows, their realities, and so forth. The second thing that people can do is to, particularly in B2B context, is gain traction by making them look good. Making them look successful for having adopted your product, for integrating it into their workflow, for something like that. The third thing you can do for traction is to start documenting. Write a playbook that you can test and iterate, as opposed to like, oh, well, we just try this thing and we have a process that's in my head. This is like kind of the things we do. Like, no, open a Notion document and start creating a process, because fast forward 6 to 18 months, this will be your playbook, whether you like it or not, whether you're intentional or you weren't, and you bring in, bigger sales team or more experienced, seasoned people who might have come from a large company, and they need something to evaluate and look at, and you cannot just like invent the playbook on the fly for them or with them. So start creating that now. That is going to be hard to do, because a lot of people like to just work on the fly and they may not document it, but that's very important.
Great stuff. What book would you recommend to our audience, and why?
I think the hard thing about Hard Things is a book that I enjoy because it starts off from the assumption that like this isn't easy and you don't get to create the perfect startup under perfect conditions. And so I think that is a book that everyone should be reading.
Cool. What one attribute or characteristic in your mind of a successful founder?
I think we've talked a little bit about it. It is resilience, and I think it is just being able to survive and continue. That is really important. I talk to founders who describe their experience over the last like few years in one way or another, sometimes going to what they call cockroach mode. So just like, how do I survive, let's say, the nuclear fallout? And I think that that is really important and underrated, as opposed to like being lucky and successful early.
Got it. What's your favorite personal productivity tool or habit?
My personal productivity tool is I don't have a to-do list.
Interesting.
I only have a calendar. I only use the calendar, and I don't use a to-do list.
That's cool, because I think calendar is much more organized, I guess.
It's either there or it's not. It forces me to use the Eisenhower decision framework, which some of your listeners should be familiar with, in terms of then focusing on what is important or urgent and important. And then if it's urgent, not important, that it gets time boxed. It'll get done, but it'll get time boxed and somewhere else.
Cool. What's a new or a crazy business idea you would love to pursue if you had time?
What's a new or crazy business idea I would love to pursue if I had time? I think an AI assistant for parents who are time poor and exhausted and financially, emotionally, and mentally drained. I would do that. Just speaking from personal experience and that of observing many people around me.
Got it. What's an interesting or fun fact about you that most people don't know?
Let's see. Fun fact is I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Cameroon in West Africa, where I worked on microfinance and small enterprise development. And I did that for a couple of years before going to graduate school, which was, for me, just an expression of what I've always cared about is, either being an entrepreneur or of service to other people who are seeking to build a better life for themselves and others. And so that is really a connection from the past to, my sense of purpose today.
Cool. Vijay, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your story, unpacking last years of building business and some of the ups and downs. People want to check out Startup System, or people want to get in touch with you. What's the best way to do it?
Sure. You can reach out to me at vijay@mystartupsystem.com. You can check out mystartupsystem.com as well as find Startup System on LinkedIn.
Vijay, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your inspiring journey and the impactful work you're doing through the Startup System. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on Founders Podcast.
My pleasure, Ash. Thank you.
Thank you all for tuning into this episode of Founders Podcast. I hope you found our conversation with Vijay insightful and inspiring. Go and check out the startupsystem.com and try to RSVP to the waiting list for the book release. I hope you will enjoy the book. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to our podcast and stay updated on our future interviews with proven founders and industry experts. Stay inspired, stay motivated, and keep building.